is download and install Anaconda. If you've actually already downloaded and installed Anaconda for other courses or maybe for your own environment, you should be good to go on that step. Keep in mind, if you haven't installed Anaconda yet, we'll go ahead and walk you through how to do that as well. Then once you've installed Anaconda, we're going to create a virtual environment. There's a couple of different files depending on your operating system, so make sure you pay attention when we go over that step. Then we'll talk about how to open up Jupyter Lab, and then we'll quickly discuss how to work with both notebooks and .py scripts with Jupyter Lab. Okay. As a quick note, if you're an advanced user of Python, please feel free to use any IDE or integrated development environment you prefer. In this course, we tend to stick with Jupyter Lab and Jupyter Notebooks just because that's the easiest for screencasting. It's really nice and it allows us to write notes and explain and visualize everything in one single screencast and one single notebook file. However, if you're an advanced user and maybe you dislike Jupyter, please feel free again to use any IDE you prefer. However, if you are new to these sort of topics, we highly recommend you use our suggested environment and tools to avoid issues along the way. So only advanced users should be using their own IDE. Quick note, this lecture does have resource links, so make sure to download the appropriate .yml file for your operating system. That .yml file is what we're going to be using when we actually create our virtual environment. But first, let's download and install Anaconda. Okay, so to begin, we need to go to www.anaconda.com/download, or simply Google search Anaconda download or Anaconda Python, and you should be able to find this link. So let's head over to the browser and check it out. All right, here we are at anaconda.com/download. Keep in mind, sometimes Anaconda changes the look of this website, so it may not look exactly like it does on my screenshot here, but more or less, you should be able to find the download links for 3 operating systems. That is Windows, macOS, and Linux. So all you need to do is click on your specific operating system. So if you're on Windows, you'll click on Windows, and eventually what it does is it scrolls you down automatically here. Then it has 2 versions, one for Python 3.7, one for Python 2.7. You're going to want to install the Python 3.7 version. And you'll notice that there's usually 2 types of installers here, specifically for Windows. There's a 64-bit and 32-bit. If you're on a relatively modern computer, it's probably going to be 64-bit. So you'll go ahead and download that graphical installer. So you just click on that, and it will automatically start downloading. It's up to you whether you want to download Anaconda's cheat sheet and give them your email, but if you just close this, you'll notice that it's already started the download for me. Now, keep in mind that you can also go to macOS. Now, if you're on macOS, again, I highly recommend downloading the graphical installer. It's essentially just a graphical installer that takes you through all the steps. If you're on Linux, go ahead and then click Linux, and it will have an installer here for you. So choose the correct installer depending on your operating system. Once you've installed that, or once you've downloaded that installer, it's time to actually install Anaconda. So I'm going to click open here, this executable file that downloaded for me, and then you'll have the Anaconda setup guide. You'll go ahead and click next, agree to the license agreement. I would recommend just installing it for just me. Then hit next. Go ahead and select the default, hit next. Then eventually you'll have the advanced installation options. There's 2 advanced options here. You'll notice that one of them says add Anaconda to my path environment variable. If you've already installed Python previously, maybe you've already installed Python from python.org, then I actually highly recommend clicking and adding Anaconda to my path environment variable. I know it says here that it's not recommended, but if you have previous versions of Python, what ends up happening is when you download or install certain files, your computer gets confused as far as what Python version it should use, your previously installed Python or your Anaconda one. So if you've already installed Python in the past from python.org, then I highly recommend adding Anaconda to your path environment variable. If this is your first installation of Anaconda in Python ever, then it's actually not really necessary to do that. Okay, so once you're all done with that, go ahead and click install. After installation, we now need to download the libraries used for this course. The installation has installed the Anaconda Prompt command line tool. We're going to be using this command line tool for the next few steps. The next step is to create and activate the virtual environment we provided for you. This environment will download all the libraries you need for the course. Please make sure to check the resource links for this lecture video and download the appropriate .yml file for your operating system. We provide different YML files depending if you're on Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. So go ahead and pause the video and make sure you've downloaded the YML file. You'll also want to make sure that you keep track of the location of that .yml file you just downloaded. we will need to know its location in order to use it. So go ahead and put it somewhere like on your desktop or in your downloads folder. Now let's go ahead and use the Anaconda prompt. So search for the Anaconda prompt on your computer. So if you're on a Mac OS, just go ahead and open up your Spotlight search and then type in Anaconda prompt and you should see it fill out. You could also use your terminal if you're on a Mac OS or Linux, or if you're on Windows, we'll go ahead and search Anaconda prompt and then open it. I'm right now on a Windows computer, so let me go ahead and search for Anaconda prompt. Okay, here I am at my desktop. Notice I'm on a Windows computer, so I downloaded the cvcourse_windows.yml file, and I've placed it somewhere I know it is, so right now it's under my downloads folder. Make sure you know where the .yml file is on your computer. Again, we recommend either just putting it on your desktop or your downloads folder. Now let's go ahead and open up the Anaconda prompt. So on your computer, just search for Anaconda prompt, and you should eventually see it pop up. So go ahead and click that open, and now we have the Anaconda prompt. So the next step is to actually cd or change directory to wherever you save that .yml file. So to do that, you simply type cd space and then the name of the folder where you downloaded it. So we're going to say downloads, and you can hit tab to autocomplete this. So again, we recommend either desktop or downloads. So then hit enter, and now I'm inside my downloads directory, and then I'm going to write out the command that allows me to create an environment from this cvcourse_windows.yml file. So the way this is done is we simply type out conda, C-O-N-D-A, space, env, space, create, space, -f, and then you type out the name of the YML file that's in this particular folder. So in my case, it's cvcourse_windows.yml. An important thing to know is you should be able to hit tab on your keyboard and have this autocomplete. If you hit tab and it does not autocomplete, that means the YML file is not in this location. So I'm going to particularly spell this wrong. So let me say cvcourse wrong YML file, hit enter. And if you find this error, spec not found, can't process without a name, that means that the YML file doesn't exist in whatever particular folder you're in, or you maybe misspelled the YML file. So keep that in mind. If you get this error, it means you're not in the right location. And again, you need to use cd to change directory into that correct location. So now let's try this again. Again, it's conda, env, create, -f, cvcourse, and in this case, I'm going to tab autocomplete. So in my case, it's windows.yml. If you're on Mac OS or Linux, it'll be different, cvcourse Mac OS or cvcourse Linux. Then go ahead and hit enter. So what this is doing is it's creating a virtual environment, and it's going to download a bunch of libraries. So this is going to take a little bit of time while it's preparing and verifying. Eventually, it's going to ask you if it wants you to allow it to create the environment. So you'll just hit Y for yes, and you'll go ahead and let it happen. So in my case, I already hit Y, and it's ready to go. Once it's ready to go, you should see a command here to activate this environment. Use conda activate, and then it'll say python_cvcourse. To deactivate the environment, use conda deactivate. Okay, so let's try it out. You should be able to also just say activate Python cvcourse or deactivate. Keep in mind, if you are on a Mac OS or Linux, it will probably say source activate or source deactivate. You should just do whatever command it tells you right here. So let's try this out. We're going to say conda activate Python_cvcourse, hit enter, and you'll notice now in parentheses it says Python cvcourse. That basically tells me that, hey, the environment is activated and you have the appropriate libraries now. So in order to start Jupyter Lab, which is the environment we'll be working in, we just need to now type out Jupyter-lab and hit enter. And you should see something pop up saying copy paste this URL in your browser when you connect for the first time. So if your browser did not automatically pop up with the Jupyter Notebook ready to go, you may want to copy and paste this. Make sure not to do Control-C, otherwise that actually kills the server here. So in your browser, you should see now something like this pop up. Let me bring it over. All right, so here I am in my browser at localhost:8888/lab. When you actually launch Jupyter Lab, you should see something that looks like this. And if you click that folder, you'll actually see the current location you are at. Okay, so we have all other downloads, some downloads. So this location in the downloads folder, this is where you're going to want to save and unzip the zip file for each of the sections of the course in order to get those notebook files. We're going to be using JupyterLab, and we're going to be using both notebooks as well as script files. So let's quickly show you how you can create a notebook. Simply hit here on Notebook, Python 3, and you'll notice a little notebook pops up here. It's .ipynb. These files can only be opened through JupyterLab or Jupyter Notebook, and you can click on this little folder file browser here to kind of collapse that. And then you should be able to say print hello world. I'm going to zoom in here just so you can see it a little better. And then do Shift Enter in order to run that cell, and you should see the direct output. And if you're familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, this is basically just kind of a different IDE for Jupyter Notebooks. Okay, so that's it for actually running notebooks. Now let's quickly show you how you can run Python scripts. Again, all you're going to do is click on File Browser, and you see this little plus button here. It indicates New Launcher. So you hit that plus button, has New Launcher, and instead of a notebook, what we're going to do is just come over here and click on Text File. So now we have untitled text. In order to run this as a Python script, all I need to do is right-click on this, say Rename, and I'm going to rename this as myscript.py, and hopefully you're already at the level of Python where this all makes sense to you. And let's try print I am running a script. Go ahead and do Control S to save that. So now I have a Python script, and if I actually want to run this script, all I need to do is hit plus over here and come down to where it says terminal. That will launch a new terminal for me, and then I will say Python and say myscript.py. Again, I should be able to tab autocomplete this myscript.py. So up to you if you want to type it out manually or just do tab autocomplete. But once you hit enter there, you should see I am running a script or whatever you happen to say in that print statement. All right, so that's all there is to it. We've learned how to install and create an Anaconda environment. We've learned how to open notebooks, and we've learned how to run .py scripts. That's everything you need to know. If you have any questions, feel free to post to the Q&A forums, and we'll get you up and running as soon as possible. Thanks, and we'll see you at the next lecture.